Well, yeah, probably. So. Good evening. Welcome everyone to the Yukon Science Institute lecture series. Thank you all for coming out tonight. So I've just got a little spiel about the YSI and then I'll introduce our speaker. The Yukon Science Institute is a nonprofit organization that seeks to promote public awareness in science activities in the Yukon and to aid and facilitate scientific research and development. As part of our mandate, YSI coordinates the lecture series that this lecture is a part of. YSI is funded by the Yukon Department of Tourism and Culture Heritage Branch and is also supported by the Yukon Beringia Interpretive Centre and Yukon Environment. Before I introduce our speaker, just a reminder that if you're not already a member, you can purchase a membership at the membership table on the way out. We really appreciate the support, only $5, and with it you'll receive emails about upcoming lectures. And also tonight we'll be filming the lecture, so just so you all know, if you're asking questions, your faces won't be on screen, but your questions might be. And I'll also come around with a microphone just so we capture all that on the recording. So tonight, Alberto Suárez-Esteban will be delivering the lecture, Carnivores, Roads, and Plants, How Unexpected Relationships Change Ecosystems. Alberto is a postdoctoral researcher at University of Alberta with a background in landscape ecology and conservation biology. Born and raised in Spain, he came to the Yukon almost a year ago after completing his PhD. His research focuses on evaluating the ecological responses of plants, birds, and other organisms to human disturbances with the goal of informing sustainable use and conservation of terrestrial ecosystems. So join me in welcoming Alberto Suárez-Esteban.
Well, good evening. I'm usually sitting there among you, so it's pretty exciting to be here today to talk to you. I belong kind of to University of Alberta, but I work at the Yukon College. I live here in Whitehorse. And I would like to thank Tanko Chan and Kwalinan First Nations for having us today in their traditional territory. I'm gonna tell you a few unexpected things. So first of all, I would like to build some trust between us. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of my background. So I was born and raised in northwestern Spain in an area called Asturias, which is very beautiful, where we have lots of coastal areas, but also mountains. So for example, these two photos are taken from exactly the same location. So the mountains and the coast are really, really close. The coast looks kind of like this, with lots of rocky cliffs and rocky beaches, really nice. And first unexpected thing of the night, we have snow in Spain. So this is a picture of an area in the mountains. More unexpected things. We still have large wildlife in Spain. So for example, we have a small population of brown bear in my homeland, which is way smaller than the grizzly bear. It's kind of the same size of a black bear, but they are brown. We have also wolves. They are also smaller than Yukon wolves and kind of brownish, but we still have some. We have red foxes, exactly the same species as you have here. And we have both the short-tail and the long-tail weasel, exactly the same species you have here as well. So we are not that different. We also have a long tradition of craftsmanship, nice architecture, traditional uses of natural resources. So for example, this is a forge, and you maybe cannot see it, but there is a wheel here. The forge has a big hammer that runs with water, with the energy of water. And we also have a long tradition of farming, which is kind of the main driver, kind of affecting the landscape. And this is my grandpa, who is turning 86 this month and is still farming. So in this fabulous area, I became a naturalist and then a biologist. And then I moved to southwest Spain to do my master's and my PhD. And I collaborated with a bunch of great, very talented researchers and people at Doñana Biological Station, which is a center of the Spanish Council of Research. And this is located in Sevilla, which you might have heard about or even been there. And this is a pretty nice place, although it is really hot. Especially in the summer, it can get really, really hot. And funny enough, then I moved to the Yukon, which is pretty much the same temperature but in negative values. So, and I could give an entire talk about this, but I'm going to focus today in the work that I've been involved here. So, we have Sevilla here in this corner, and here right next to the coast, there is Doñana National Park, where I did the fieldwork for my master's and my PhD. And this is a pretty special national park and pretty famous in Europe because of several things. One of the main reasons is that it has a huge wetland. So it's a very, very important area for waterfowl and water birds in general. And it is not surprising because if you look at the map, it's kind of in the epicenter in the epicenter of the migration routes between Africa and Europe. So, every water bird that comes here and see this massive amount of water is going to stay and rest and feed and keep traveling or staying for reproducing. Another nice area of the park is right next to the coast, and it's a large area covered by natural dunes, which are pretty special, especially in the Mediterranean basin, because all the coastal ecosystems are being transformed into hotels and very touristic places. So this is a very special place. And so on top of this little hill, you can see here that is a maritime juniper. It's a very endangered species because they like to live in dunes, and dunes are very scarce. And the rest of the area, pretty much of the park, is covered by Mediterranean scrubland or woodland, where you have lots of shrubs and still some massive cork oaks. For example, these are around 500 years old. And this particular tree is, as in this area, kind of in the interface between the scrubland and the wetland. So it is used by lots of water birds for nesting. So all those kind of grayish things that you see there are huge nests of white storks, herons, egrets, spoonbills, lots of birds. And this Mediterranean scrubland is also special because it hosts one of the only two populations or self-sustaining populations of a very endangered species, which is the Iberian lynx, which I had the luck to see a few times. This is a mom and two cubs that I took a photo of in 2010 in the summer, resting in the shadow. So today we're going to talk about this area of scrubland, in particular 3 areas that you see there, circled in red. So if we zoom in these 3 areas, we're going to see something like this, which is a massive grid of linear developments everywhere. So for example, we have a dirt road that connects a major road with a research station that is inside the park, which is where I stayed when I was doing my field work. But there are lots of trails, different trails, and also firebreaks. The reason why there is so many is because this park is pretty small. We're talking about around 500 square kilometers, which is like 2% of Colonia National Park. And even though fire is part of the ecosystem, the managers of the park are very concerned about fire spreading out. So that's why they built lots of firebreaks. And lots mean lots. Like we have more than 2,500 kilometers of linear developments across the park, which means that if you choose a random location within the park, you have a 80% chance to be closer than 200 meters from a linear development. Just as a curiosity, this is the same length that Yellowstone has, approximately, but Doñana has a tenth of the surface of Yellowstone. So it's a pretty huge density. And we don't really know to what extent those linear developments have impacts on the ecosystems, but we could expect those impacts to be really, really large, knowing that there is that high density. So, for example, if I ask you an example of impacts of linear developments on plant communities in the Yukon, you might think in something like this, which is, for example, the sweet clover spreading out along trail sides, or the dandelions also spreading out along roads and other linear developments. Surprisingly, we found that happened in Doñana, but with native species, not with invasive species. So for example, these are Mediterranean junipers, and you pretty much can see like a hedgerow along this dirt road. And also, very interestingly, we found, remember this endangered juniper that I showed you before? This is one of them, and it is, we found 29 of this along this road, which is more than 2 kilometers away from the dunes where these species usually are. So that was very interesting and very surprising. So we dig a little bit more into that. So we have this road, which is 11 kilometers long, and we have pretty much in the middle a population of junipers, Mediterranean junipers, not the maritime junipers. And funny enough, when you drove kind of far from this population, you can see that you still can see some junipers along the road, but not in the scrubland, in the interior of the scrubland. So we noticed that kind of the population was extending along the road. The junipers were kind of using the road as an avenue to expand. So why is that? And we were interested in this, so this was in one of these areas that I circle in red. So we were interested, is this happening in other places across the park? So we did a survey in these 3 different areas. And so in each of these areas, we set 2 blocks of transects, and one of these blocks looked like this. So we have the linear development here, the trail or the firebreak. So we sampled, we counted all the berry bushes that we could find along, right on the edge of the trail or firebreak, and in a transect parallel to this, but 60 meters away from the linear development in the interior of the scrubland. So we counted all the berry bushes in both places. And what we found is that we had a density of, so that is 0.06 per square meter. So that means that in 100 square meters, you're going to have like 6 berry bushes in the interior of the scrubland. And if we move to the trail, we're going to find more than double. We're going to find around 13 berry bushes per 100 square meters. And this difference is substantial and was never reported before. So we wanted to know also if what kind of species were contributing to this pattern. Because you might have one or two species that for some reason are more abundant along the trails or the firebreaks, and they will be kind of driving the pattern. So we broke down this pattern into species at the species level. So, well, this is happening across the park. So when we broke the pattern at the species level, we found that three berry bushes were actually more abundant away from the trails, like they were more abundant in the scrubland than on the trail sides. We found another 4 species that were equally abundant in between the trail sides and the scrubland. The abundances were similar. And we found up to 8 species that were more abundant near trails than away from them. So yes, this is happening to other berry bushes. But the question is, why? What's going on here? So we dig into that as well. So this is the life cycle of a plant, in this case is a wild pear. And the fact that we are finding more berry bushes near the trails means that this cycle is kind of more favorable near the trail than in the scrubland. Something is going on here that is kind of producing more shrubs near the trail and away from it. So a plant produces flowers. These flowers turn into fruits. The fruits give seeds. The seeds germinate and generate seedlings, and the seedlings grow into new plants, right? So, okay, we need to check every arrow because we need to know what's happening here. So we monitor tons of flowers, like 80,000 flowers or so. And we didn't find any difference in between flowering intensity in between trails or trail sites and the scrubland. We also moved into the production of fruits, and we didn't find differences in the amount of fruits that are produced near the trails or far away from them. We also checked how seeds survived. So we offered lots of seeds in different places for predators, and then we count the remaining seeds, and we didn't find difference between the trail side and the scrubland. More or less, the same amount of seeds disappeared in both places. And we also sowed and monitored hundreds of seedlings, and we didn't find any difference in seedling emergence or survival in between the trail side or the scrubland. So the option that we had left was something is going on here. If the bushes here are producing the same amount of seeds than in the scrubland, the seeds we supposed that the seeds are coming from elsewhere. The seeds are coming from somewhere else to the trail. So, it's not that plants can just grab their roots and walk. So they have different mechanisms to be dispersed. So for example, different seeds have different mechanisms. The coconuts use the water, the mistletoes use their internal pressure, so they explode and they get dispersed. For example, the aspen uses the air. But berries are evolutionarily designed to be eaten by animals. So who could eat these berries in Spain, in Doñana? So it could be birds, it could be mammals, and it could be lizards. There are way more vertebrates that can disperse seeds, but these are the ones that we had in Doñana. But this is not only about seed dispersal, it's about seed dispersal to linear developments. The seeds are arriving to trails. So we needed a vector, a seed disperser that was using the trails preferentially. So can birds use the trails, positively select the trails rather than the scrubland? Well, some of them do. This is a pile of poop that I took a picture of in Australia, because the cassowaries use trails for moving and also for dropping. But unfortunately, we don't have cassowaries in Spain. And the birds that we have are flying birds, and they usually disperse seeds underneath the place they use for resting and nesting. And you don't get a lot of branches along the trails. So we discarded birds. Lizards are a potential good candidate because they use trails for sunbathing. They need to warm up, and trails are a great place to warm up because they don't have shadows and they can also take advantage of the radiant heat from the soil. So it's a great place for lizards to sunbathe. So they could be dispersing seeds along trails. The only thing is that the only lizard that we have in Doñana that could be eating fruits is not active in the fall where berries are available. So we discarded lizards as well. And they are really too scarce to be driving this. So what about mammals? Do mammals use trails? Well, they do. They actually do. So we focused on mammals. We focused our efforts on surveying mammals. So the question was, are mammals dispersing seeds to the linear developments? So these are, I'm going to walk you through the mammal species that we have in Doñana. So this is the red deer, which is similar to an elk, but way smaller. This is the fallow deer, which has flat antlers like the moose, but they are really, really small. They are like a mule deer in size or so. I have nice white spots in the fur. This is the wild boar, or wild pig. The rabbit, which is the only mammal species originally from Spain. And this is the Mediterranean hare. Well, I don't know if you can see it. There is the eye here, the nose, and the ears. It's pretty well camouflated. We have also red foxes, Eurasian badgers, which are pretty cute. We have mongoose as well. We have common genets. We have the lynx, and we have otters. And of course, all of these are carnivores, as you know. So in our surveys, which I'm going to explain right away, we only found scats from these animals. So just to keep that in mind. So what we did is exactly along the same transects where we counted berry bushes, we surveyed mammal scats and we collect all of them, both along the trail side and in the interior of the scrapland. So we could compare how many seeds do they disperse in one habitat and the other one. So yeah, basically I walk a lot, several kilometers a day, and we did that, or I did that for 2 years in a row in the fall during 3-4 months. So lots of poop. I collected lots of poop. So when we look at the results, and these are scats that we found per survey, we found that ungulates, which are deer, both deer and the wild boar, almost exclusively drop their scats in the scrapland, which gave us a clue that ungulates are clearly avoiding the road or the trails or the firebreaks. Contrarily, the rabbits I found more, like twice more scats of rabbits near the trails than away from them. And for carnivores, it was even more, the difference was even bigger, because we found like in between 3 or 4 times more scats along the trails. So these guys, both carnivores and rabbits, were using preferentially the trails and the firebreaks for dropping. But you know, if you remember, we found more berry bushes near the trails, and if we sum these bars, it doesn't look quite promising that we will be able to explain the berry bush pattern with this. But we found interesting things. We brought those scats to the lab and we started looking for seeds. So for example, these are rabbit pellets. So I basically smashed them, and these are the seeds that I found within them, which are juniper seeds. And even we found some seeds that were germinating. This is the kind of the first root that the seed emits. So it was pretty cool. So we found a very interesting result. In the case of ungulates, for every 10 seeds that they were dispersing, they damage 90. That means that they damage 90% of the seeds that they ingested, which makes them not very good seed dispersers, right? For the rabbits, it was a little better, but they still damage around 80% of the seeds they ingested. But for carnivores, for every 10 seeds they dispersed, they damage only 1. And it is because these carnivores, the fox and the badger, are like vacuums. They don't take the time to chew, they just swallow. So they are great seed dispersers. They are dispersing a lot of seeds. So if we turn the pattern of scats that we found into as the pattern of seeds, these completely change. So ungulates were dispersing very few seeds, and pretty much all of them into the scrapland. Rabbits were dispersing a pretty good amount of seeds, and most of them to the trails, and carnivores pretty much the same. And even though we found the least amount of scats from carnivores, it turned out that they were dispersing most of the seeds that we found. So guess what? When we evaluated which species are dispersed in these berry bushes, we found that the berry bushes that were more abundant in the scrubland were dispersed by ungulates, which use the scrubland. The berry bushes that were more abundant near trails were dispersed by rabbits and carnivores, especially carnivores. And the berry bushes that had similar densities both along trail sites and in the scrubland were dispersed by all of them. So this means basically that the dispersal of seeds is basically changing plant communities in the way they are structured in the ecosystem. So carnivores are really acting as natural gardeners. So it's not really smart to hunt them or to kill them out. And even they were promoting, so this has several implications, right? Roads are known by their negative impacts. They cause erosion and they alter animal behavior and they alter plant reproductive success and lots of things. But the fact that especially carnivores were planting shrubs along trail sites is kind of improving or kind of balancing the potential negative impacts of these roads, which is a pretty good ecological service. And they were even starting new populations of endangered shrubs like the maritime juniper. So they are really doing a great job in the ecosystem. But I've been asked, so isn't that weird? Like, aren't carnivores supposed to eat meat? So, if I ask you or a general audience, what is a carnivore? You might think in something like a wolf or a snow leopard or something that eats meat, right? But bears, even the panda, which only eats bamboo, are also carnivores. So what makes a carnivore a carnivore? So, because really, lots of carnivores are like berries, like lots of them eat berries. Like the fisher and the weasels and even the wolves eat berries sometimes. Like I know that in Spain they go sometimes into the vine orchards and they eat the grapes. Because it's a great resource, right? Plants are not going anywhere and you don't need to chase them, and it's a great food. It's full of sugar and other minerals. So it's a great resource. So carnivores also exploit them. So what these animals have in common is their teeth. Regardless of their diet, they all have this massive teeth here and this position, which are the last premolar in the upper jaw and the first molar in the lower jaw. And those big teeth are designed for cracking meat and bones. And probably most of you have dogs, and you know that when they are chewing something that is very tough, they put it here, right? Because this is where they have these teeth. And so I didn't tell you before, but cats are pretty much the only carnivores that pretty much exclusively eat meat. Only cats. And you can see that in their teeth. So this is a skull of a lynx, and you can see that the teeth finish where these big teeth are. But in a skull of many carnivores, not all of them, but many carnivores, you will find some other teeth in here after the big butchering teeth. And they haven't lost that because they chew sometimes. And that means that, you know, you can learn things from the diet of an animal from their teeth. And actually there are some nice skulls here that you can check in the way out. So yeah, to take home, I don't like very long talks, so we can now start interacting. The take-home message that I would like you to take today is that seed dispersal is a very powerful ecological process or mechanism that can really shape ecosystems. And carnivores are really playing a huge role in here. For example, this is a badger poop, and you can see lots of pear trees growing from it. So they have really the power to change the spatial distribution of plants. So besides all the other functions that carnivores perform in ecosystems, like prey control and all these things that you probably already knew, they also can shape plant communities. And you know, plants are in the base of terrestrial ecosystems. Without plants, we just have deserts. So this is a pretty important ecological interaction. And also an interesting message that I would like you to take is that roads aren't bad per se. They don't have, like, they are not necessarily bad or good. Everything depends on the ecological context. So for example, here roads were acting as corridors for native species and even endangered species. But that is because we have rabbits and carnivores using them. And you know, like, we should ask the questions like, what if they were eating and dispersing seeds from an invasive species like the prickly pear? We might have something like that, which will be pretty bad, because this is a very invasive species. And and this is also in southwestern Spain. You know, it depends on what the carnivores are eating. And they don't choose in between, oh no, this is an invasive species, I'm not gonna eat that. You know, so everything depends on the ecological context. So in Doñana, we found that trails could have a positive effect on native scrubs based on the interaction with carnivores, but that interaction could turn into something negative in other places. What about the Yukon? Well, you definitely have carnivores, you definitely have berries, and you have trails all over the place. So it might happen here as well. I don't know, but we can discuss about it, because here you can teach me way more than I can teach you. So to sum up, just say big thanks to all the wonderful people that help me doing fieldwork and lab work and work in general. And of course, thank you for coming tonight. And if you have questions, Isabel has a microphone.
I can figure out. Okay, any questions? Yes.
Hi.
Hey.
You were talking about foxes, and I've seen fox tracks in the winter going from rose bush to rose bush, and I can't tell that they're eating the rose hips, but the rose hips are sticking out of the snow. Mm-hmm. So that would be one carnivore, not an obligate carnivore, but a carnivore that's spreading seeds here in the Yukon.
Absolutely.
But of course they're doing it in the winter, so it doesn't matter whether there's a linear feature or not. They're just walking around on top of the snow.
Yeah, that's the difference I can see in between this part of Spain and the Yukon. The Yukon has pretty open environments. Like you can pretty much walk through every kind of forest that you have here, right? But it's pretty tough to walk through this scrubland, believe me. So, you know, carnivores are smart and they use the linear developments that we use because it's energetically more efficient. So, yeah.
Several places in the north here, I've seen grouse eating rose hips, especially in the wintertime. And they tend to walk along the roads, and then you see the roses spread along the roads too. So I think the grouse contribute in the same way. And of course, if the carnivores eat them while they're full of these rose hips, the carnivores would make a difference too, I think.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Roads shed water, and so when it rains, they shed off to the edge. So wouldn't there be a relationship along the side of the roads between the water there's just more moisture in the soil?
Absolutely, that could be a factor. In fact, there are some species that spread along roads because of that. Even species from wetlands, like the reed, Phragmites, those spread along roads because of that mechanism. We planted plants right next to the trail and in the scrubland, and we didn't find differences between the survival of plants between the two habitats. So I suspect it's not a huge deal here, but it can definitely be in other places.
Is Doñana a windy place?
It can be very windy, yeah. Especially in the afternoon because it's very close to the sea. So yeah, we have lots of wind.
So the reason I'm asking is I'm wondering about the effect of wind and blowing dust off the road into the ditches, and the dust would help the vegetation to grow more, because there would be maybe more nutrients in the dust than there is in the road surface or adjacent to the road. Have you thought about that?
I don't think about nutrients, like being a huge difference in nutrients, because the dust here is pretty much sand. This is a complete sand place. It's very, very sandy. So what the wind is blowing is sand. And, you know, I wouldn't expect the nutrients to be different. But, you know, given that we planted plants, we didn't notice any difference in between survival or growth or anything like that.
For how many years?
I monitored those seedlings for 3 years, which was all I could do, right? Because I need to write down my PhD, so. But ideally, I mean, these berry bushes can be this tall and be 20 years old. Because, you know, the summer is very, very harsh in here. So very, very few seedlings do it through the summer. Most of them die. Like in a bad year, you will have like a 1 per 1,000 or so of survival. So you really need to monitor several thousands of seedlings during 10, 20 years to know that. Yeah.
So I'm wondering about the chicken and the egg thing.
Yeah.
So when they put the road through,
Yeah.
it was just like the scrubland.
Yeah.
So who brought those seeds in initially? Because the carnivores would be there to eat the bunnies, mostly, wouldn't they? or to eat the berries that weren't there yet. So somebody had to come. I mean, how did it all start?
That's the million-dollar question. Great question. So the carnivores eat bunnies in the spring, but in the fall, for what I have seen, and I have seen lots of poop, foxes and badgers eat pretty much exclusively fruit in the fall. And badgers are a pretty neat example because they are pretty specialized in their diet, but seasonally. So, for example, in the spring, they dig the bunny burrows and eat the small bunnies, and they are specialized to do that in the spring. But then in the fall, they eat pears and dates and blackberries and some olives as well, but they don't eat anything else. You might see like a beetle every once in a while, but they eat mostly fruit. So that's regarding the diet. What thing was first? We don't really know. The thing that I know for sure is that this pattern is increasing. So if we, I truly believe that once they put the road there, which was like 60 years ago or so, the carnivores started to use it. So they started to disperse seeds. But to do that hedgerow, that will take decades. So we don't really know if there was a pretty good density of shrubs already there when they built the road. What we know for sure is that they are planting new shrubs. And they are planting new shrubs much more intensively along the trail than elsewhere. That's what I can tell you.
And who eats was it a juniper, an endangered juniper?
Yeah.
Because do both the bunnies and the carnivores, or berries don't taste very good. I don't find them very good. So who is eating those? Who planted that?
So the Mediterranean juniper was dispersed kind of like 2/3 by rabbits and 1/3 by carnivores, by foxes. And the maritime juniper was exclusively dispersed by foxes. And why is that? Because the fruit sources are very far away from that road, and rabbits don't move that far. But if you go to the dunes, I have found latrines of rabbits with junipers growing there. So they both eat both species. But to this road, only foxes disperse the maritime juniper. And it's not very frequently, like I found 96 seeds in 2 years. But that is enough for them to recruit, which is pretty cool.
Would the fact that the road is actually open land and more available for something to implant itself rather than be the rough land just off the road where it's hard for its seed to take hold, would that have any influence?
It might. The only thing is that we found that a very similar amount of fruits and seeds were produced next to the trail and away from it. So we would expect that to play a similar role in both places as opposed to be generating a difference. So really what we found that will make the difference is the seeds that the carnivores and the rabbits disperse.
Thank you.
I think this is just a really neat example because compared to a lot of other places in the world, invasive species would potentially take over these linear developments. So on that note, do you know if the park managers, do they have, a sense or sort of a watching as to if invasive species from adjacent areas may come into the park? Do they have like any sense if that is a probability in the future?
We didn't find invasive shrubs in the park, but there are grasses that are invasive, and they do spread along the roads as well. Probably dispersed by cars, I would suspect. I don't really know. But there is a kind of like a concern about invasive species, but in this case only grasses, not shrubs.
Alberto, it seems to me that once you've established these relationships, you could turn it on its head, look at the distribution of the berry bushes and determine the patterns which the carnivores are using on the landscape, which may include things that aren't as obviously trails as that Jeep road right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and I kind of started to create a simulation model because I had some historical data that my research group has collected in this national park about radio tracking of badgers and foxes. So in collaboration with Australian researchers, that's why I went to Australia. We kind of built a model of seed dispersal by carnivores using the linear developments, and the results of the model were pretty much the same as what I found in the scats in terms of seed dispersal. I also, as an anecdote, I did an experiment with foxes and badgers in captivity. So I wanted to know for how long the seeds were inside them, so I can predict dispersal distances, right? Because if I know how far the animal moves in a certain time, and I know how long the seed is inside them, I can pretty much predict where the seeds are going to arrive. So I needed to feed them and then wake up every hour and see if they have pooped, and collect it and wash it and take the seeds. And that was for an entire week. So I slept at 50 minutes intervals, which was pretty tough. But so being a biologist is not always that that cool, you know. It's tough sometimes, but the overall result is really neat. And I'm still on it, so it's not that bad.
How long does it take a seed to go through a fox?
Around 30 hours or so. It varies, right? Between 18 and 42 hours or so. But kind of the mean was around 30 or so. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you all for coming, and thank you, Alberto.
Thanks.